So Horde Notions, 5 mana, 1 of each color for a 5/5 Vigilance, Trample, Haste. This thing beats down. I mean, Vigilance, Trample, Haste, if you're not attacking with this thing, you don't really have an excuse. Alone, the commander puts a clock on your opponents, and that's something the deck is built around. We're really trying to beat people down. Now, he's also got the ability of you can pay 1 of each color to play target elemental card from your graveyard without playing its mana cost. Now, the thing about this is it's instant speed, it ignores timing restrictions. So, for instance, and it's a cast trigger too, so it triggers Cascade, things like that. So first off, we got our mana base. 5 basics. I think it's important to have basics because there's a lot of hate running around, and you want to play around it. I've got Hermit Druid too, so I think 5 basics is just the perfect amount. We also play 5 bounce lands. We play the enemy color bounce lands, so Rot Farm, Garrison, Boilerworks, Basilica, and Growth Chamber. The deck is not exactly aggro, it's mid-range. I want to hit all my land drops, and bounce lands are perfect for that. Also, you can bounce a Triome to your hand and then cycle it for a form of secret card advantage, and that is pretty big brain. Now we get onto our rainbow lands. We've got 6 rainbow lands. We got our Path of Ancestry, just rainbow, tribal, pretty self-evident why you'd play it. Command Tower, City of Brass, Forbidden Orchard, Mana Confluence, and Tarnished Citadel. Now all of these, there's a cost that you're paying. You're taking damage, sometimes a lot of damage, or you're giving opponents 1/1s, but these lands come in untapped and they make mana of any color, and I want to have all my colors. You know, one of the easiest ways for you to lose with a deck like this is that you're missing one of your essential colors, maybe an opponent takes you off it, and then you just lose because you have cards sitting in your hand you can't do anything with. Now we're getting more into the expensive part of the mana base. If you want, you could just play trilands and guild gates and stuff, and they'll be just as good, except that they'll come in tapped, and it will be a little bit slower. But in this case, we've got all 5 enemy fetches. The reason I picked the enemy fetches is because I play the ally triomes from Capenna, and I want all my fetches to be able to get all my triomes. Also, the enemy fetches were cheaper. These also, they trigger landfall effects, so we've got Lotus Cobra and Omnath, one of the Omnaths, the 4-color one. Both of those want you to landfall a lot, so fetch lands are good to trigger that. Now on to the triomes. As I said, I play the Capenna triomes because I want to be able to fetch all my triomes with all my fetches. They're not amazing, but they're solid because you can fetch them and you can cycle them, and sometimes you get flooded, but if you get flooded with a couple of triomes, you can kind of counteract the flood with the cycling, though admittedly, 3 mana is a lot to pay for the cycle. So then I play all the shocks, because fetches plus shocks, that's synergy, that's how you build a good, efficient mana base in many colors. Granted, I take a lot of damage from that, because fetch shock, that's 3 damage to your face. We're going to see later I've added a couple ways to gain life, because frankly it's unavoidable that with this deck you're going to take a lot of damage from your mana base. Okay, now finally into the real cards. Sol Ring, Ubiquitous, Arcane Signet, and Felwar Stone as a backup Arcane Signet. I need fixing, I need ramp. And Chromatic Orrery. This card is amazing. It 7 mana, taps for 5, but you can spend your mana as though it were mana of any color. So you don't have to count or keep track of, oh, do I have enough green, whatever. No, you just, mana is mana, and you can spend it however you'd like. And if that wasn't enough, 5 and tap, draw a card for each color among permanents you control. If I have my commander out, that is a draw 5. And it's repeatable. Kind of ridiculous. You run out of cards, you use this to refill. And there's kind of a tidal motion to it, because if you play Chromatic Orrery, you're going to have so much mana that you are going to run out of cards. You'll just play them all out. And then sort of the tide goes back out, and you pay your 5, you take a turn off of spending a bunch of mana, but you refill. And then the big waves, they come back as you play all the cards in your hand. Really a blast to play. This is one of my high win rate cards. Dak Faden, I include him with the artifacts because he steals artifacts. Fundamentally, I added this card because I wanted more efficient ramp, and he is ramp that also sets your opponents back. Now, the draw 2, discard 2 is also good because I have kind of a Reanimator sub-theme. There's a couple cards with flashback. If I have a Muldrotha out and a Dak Faden, for instance, I'm just discarding the cards I want to play with Muldrotha that turn. If you can turn Dak Faden's plus into card advantage, it's great because a 3-mana Planeswalker with card advantage is just rocking. Creatures. So start with mana creatures. Birds of Paradise, gotta have your mana, self-evident. We also play Noble Hierarch and Ignoble Hierarch. They don't add quite as much different types of mana as birds, but they have Exalted. And the Exalted can actually be really good because normally you have to hit someone 5 times with your commander to kill him, but if you have 1 instance of Exalted, you only need to hit him 4 times. If you have both these guys out, you only need to hit someone 3 times. So that is a significant addition to damage, as long as you remember the trigger. People often forget the trigger. Then we've got Lotus Cobra. He's fixing. He attacks. He doesn't have to tap for mana, so 2 mana for a 2-power attacker could come in handy. I might need to kill some walkers, get some chip damage in. The ideal is you go Lotus Cobra turn 2, and then turn 3 you fetch and you play a 5-drop, and you're way ahead. Bloom Tender. This card is incredible. He taps for 5 if I have my commander out, and can be used to activate the commander, play something else. This is another very high win rate card that my friends try to kill immediately. Fabor Elder, same thing. It's 1 more mana, but it has Vigilance, and it gets powered up based off your colors, so it can hit people for 5 and tap for mana. That's pretty good. Also, it will never tap for less than 2 mana, because it itself is green and white. Alright, Risen Reef. It's kinda ramp, it's kinda card advantage. We got elemental synergy. I really don't think I need to justify a Risen Reef in an elemental deck that wants a lot of mana. Though, admittedly, this is not that much of an elemental deck. I play maybe 11 of them. I want to be able to activate my commander, but I also want to play good cards, so I only play the elementals that I really think fit the theme and are good on their own and with the commander. Hermit Druid. This guy is great. If you see this guy, kill him on sight. Now, in this deck, he doesn't just instantly win, but he still mills an average of something like 20 cards, and I play flashback cards, I play good elementals I want in my graveyard, I play Living Death. If I'm activating Hermit Druid, I know I'm going to have my value. And he puts a land in your hand. That matters. You want to hit your land drops. Omnath, Locus of Creation. This guy is ramp, but he's also a bunch of other things. He's life gain. Really, fundamentally, we're playing this guy for the second landfall ability. If you can Omnath and then fetch, you're adding 4 mana, and it's ridiculous. But the great thing about him is, even if he gets answered, that's fine, because he draws a card when he comes into play. You can keep recurring him with a commander. This guy just does everything. Hostage Taker. This is a ramp card, because I want to steal and replay your Soul Ring. That is the ideal Hostage Taker. But it's also interaction. I can deal with fearsome things that opponents have. And it's even though it's a 4-drop, it's worth reanimating with a big reanimation spell, because it answers your opponent's threat, and then if they don't deal with it, you play the threat. So even though this card, like a lot of the cards you're going to see, doesn't have that much elemental synergy, it has just with itself synergy of being good, if that doesn't make any sense. Okay, so now we've got Fulminator Mage. This guy is interaction. You sack him, you destroy a non-basic land. People hate land destruction in Commander. Those people are cowards. You should destroy their lands if they just can't take it. I mean, so here's the thing. Sometimes you destroy someone's land and they concede on the spot. It happened to me once before that a guy plays his commander and I burn it. I play some burn spell on it. He concedes immediately because he says, I didn't come here to be targeted. Now people think that that's, oh, I'm a bad person, but you know, what did Sun Tzu say? He said that the supreme art of war is to subdue your opponent without fighting. So if you can just by targeting someone's land with 1 Fulminator Mage, get them to concede, you've done the ultimate Sun Tzu value play of playing 3 mana kill target player. It's great. And you can keep replaying it with the commander. A lot of effects, like Horde of Notions, they exile the thing after you replay them, but not Horde of Notions. Horde, you can just keep playing and playing and playing. So as many times as you want to pay 5 mana, you can destroy a non-basic. And there are some board states where this is really, really good. Like if you're up against a control deck who's just trying to hit all his land drops, stop playing your cards in hand, and just use all your mana to kill all his lands, and he'll just lose. You'll beat him to death with a Horde of Notions. It's great. Mr. Orfeo, the Boulder. This guy is a recent ad, but I think he's going to be great. He doubles whenever you attack double target creature's power till end of turn, obviously you want to use him on the commander, because 10 power, vigilance, trample, haste. Kess, Dissonant Mage. 4 mana, 3/4 flying, and during each of your turns you can play one of your instants or sorceries from your yard. She attacks effectively, and she is insane if she sticks around, because you're just going to keep getting more and more value. If you can replay a cheap instant or sorcery, it's just tremendous. And of course she synergizes with all the graveyard cards, because it's like she's reanimating my instants and sorceries. Aragorn the Unifier. Aragorn the Uniter. This guy's new. 4 mana, 1 of each color but black for a 5/5. Cast a white spell, make a 1/1 human soldier. Cast a blue spell, scry 2. Cast a red spell, deal 3 to target opponent. Cast a green spell, target creature gets +4/4 till end of turn. And these can all trigger off the same spell. The dream is you play your Aragorn, and the next turn you play your commander, and then you attack for 14 and push another 3 off the damage. So hitting for 17 total, scrying 2, and making a 1/1. Not a bad turn 5. Damage is effective. People don't think it is, but it is. Try it. We've also got Saskia the Unyielding. 1 mana of each color except for blue, 3/4 vigilance haste, comes into play, choose a player. And whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, it deals that much damage to the chosen player. This is a damage increaser. It's basically a damage doubler. She pushes damage, and she synergizes with other cards that increase damage, especially, what's her name? Gisela. Gisela and Saskia on board is quite a board. Narset Enlightened Exile. This is a pretty new one. 4 mana, 3/4. Creatures you control have prowess, which that is huge. That pushes a lot of damage really quickly. Anyone who's ever played with Jeskai Ascendancy knows that multiple instances of prowess really take off, or rather, prowess across the board really takes off. And when she attacks, you exile target non-creature, non-land card with mana value less than her power from a graveyard and copy it. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. Now, this is great because you can play great spells from your opponents or replay your own, and it triggers her prowess again. There are a lot of cards in here that they're like shadow commanders. That, like, if they just stick around, I don't need to have my commander because they'll win the game on their own. I found it's very effective to play cards like this because your opponents only have so much removal. They can't kill everything. Yidris Maelstrom Wielder. 1 of each mana but white, 5/4 trample, and when he hits an opponent, all your spells from hand this turn have Cascade. If Yidris hits and then I get to play out my hand, it's going to be nuts. I'm going to have a lot of value. This deck is designed to cascade effectively. There are a lot of really good things I can cascade into. There's not really anything that's a bad cascade. And if I give this guy double strike and give all my things double cascade, it just goes crazy. Beware the Yidris turn. Knight of New Alara. This card is great. Each of your other multicolored creatures gets +1/1 for each of its colors. Makes my commander a 10/10. Pumps a lot of my other things. Wow. The only drawback of this guy is he dies to Lightning Bolt, but that's not really a drawback in Commander. Shriek Maw. You can evoke him for 2 to kill a thing. You can play him for 5. He's perfect with my commander because I evoke him, and then I use my commander to replay him, and then I can chump block with him and keep replaying him with my commander. Fundamentally a great card. A little bit that he can only hit non-black, non-artifact creatures, but he really synergizes with my commander. Muldrifter. Same concept. Play it early or play it late. Block with it, reanimate it, draw some cards. Look at him, he's like an idea fish. Who doesn't love an idea fish? Lord of Extinction. This guy is so cool. He's huge, and he one-shots players. Also, if you can give him lifelink, you can gain a bunch of life. If you can Swords to Plowshares him, even. I've done that before because I had to gain life. Not ideal, but like gaining 58, not bad. Olivia Crimson Bride goes very well with Lord of Extinction and a lot of other things. Pretty new card. 6 mana, 3/4 flying haste. Attacks, and you reanimate one of your creatures tapped and attacking. But you have to exile it when you don't have a legendary vampire, which is, in my case, only Olivia, I think. Great because she pushes damage immediately. You play her, you attack with her right away, and your opponents suddenly have to deal with a bunch of stuff. Ideally, they're going to want to just answer the Olivia. Sire of Insanity. This card is ridiculous. Everyone needs to play Sire of Insanity. Each end step, each player discards their hand. What more is there to say? And I don't even care about it with Horde of Notions, because I can use his ability to bring back my elementals. This guy laughs at control decks, he laughs at combo decks, he laughs at anyone who has any plan of any sort. He also synergizes with all my, Cass Muldrotha, things that play from the graveyard. And if I can Cyclonic Rift with a Sire of Insanity, bounce all their things to their hands, and then they discard their hands. What's better than that? Muldrotha the Gravetide. It's an elemental, it lets me play things from my graveyard. It's a win con because it's a 6/6. This card is just ridiculous. You should kill it on sight. Consecrated Sphinx. This card is a card I'm playing because I can hardcast it or I can reanimate it, and if it sticks around, it will just win the game. I've never seen a Consecrated Sphinx stick around and not completely take over the game. It's simply the nature of the card. Bane of Progress. This guy is great. He's an elemental, so I can replay him, and when he comes in, you destroy all artifacts and enchantments, and he gets big depending on how many you destroyed. There are a lot of decks that this guy completely blows out because they're artifact enchantment synergy, and this guy will wipe half their board, and he hits things hard. He's especially good when you instant speed him with your Horde of Notions in response to some shenanigans. Aurelia the War Leader. This card is ridiculous. It's a 6 mana, 3/4 flying vigilance haste, but it gives you another combat when it attacks, so really it hits for 6. On its own, 6 mana for something that hits for 6 in the air the turn you play it is good enough. But she gives you an extra combat, so she's outrageous. You kill players when you play this. And it doubles with all my other double effects, because it's a different kind of doubling. You give a creature double strike twice, that's redundant. But you give a creature double strike and you attack with Aurelia, now you've got into the realm of quadrupling. The one drawback of this card is it has a restrictive mana cost, but I accept that drawback. It is worth it. Gisela Blade of Gold Knight. This card is a lot like Aurelia. She has flying and first strike. She makes your opponents take double damage from everything and their permanents also. So this isn't just double damage from your stuff. This is double damage from absolutely anything. Also, you and your permanents take half damage. And it prevents half the damage rounded up. So like if you take 1, you take nothing. If you take 3, you take 1. It's delicious. This is like a life gain card. It stabilizes. And she flies across and murders players. Karavek the Merciless. I'm playing this card because I like it and because I see it played badly. Whenever an opponent plays a spell, he deals damage to target creature or player. It's errated to any target, equal to that spell's mana value. So people play this card badly because they're cowards. So they, I play a Karavek, and you play a card, and I just hit you for the value of the card you played. But no, you can target it. So you could, for instance, play a Karavek and announce to everyone, hey, I see Dylan is playing combo, so whenever any of us play a spell, except me, I'm going to hit Dylan with the damage, and then we're going to burn him down. And that happened recently, and he got down to such a low life total that if he played any spell to try and combo off, the Karavek would kill him. So Karavek, he burns down players, he burns down creatures, and he scares your opponents off of playing spells. He's great. Elish Norn. My god. What? There's nothing to say. Magmatic Force. This thing is great because it triggers every upkeep. Just remember your triggers, because people don't pay attention, and they miss their Magmatic Force triggers on their opponent's upkeeps, but much like Karavek, it burns down players. Unlike Karavek, it is an elemental and can be cheated into play quickly with Horde of Notions. And 3 damage every upkeep. Who doesn't love Lightning Bolt? Maelstrom Wanderer. This is probably the best creature in the deck. I can cheat it with my commander. It gives all my creatures haste, which goes with the beatdown plan, and it cascades twice. Imagine if I got like a Gisela and an Aurelia or something like that. There's all sorts of things it can cascade into, and very few of them are bad. Sometimes you whiff, of course. You get 2 ramp spells, but most of the time, Maelstrom Wanderer is Wrecking Face, and in this deck, he's not just going to Wreck Face once. He's going to keep getting replayed every time he's put in the graveyard. It's ridiculous. Alright, now we got some enchantments. Animate Dead. Why wouldn't we play it? 2 mana, reanimate a thing. I'm playing a reanimator deck. I can also reanimate opponents' things. Now, Duelist's Heritage. This is a cool one. Whenever 1 or more creatures attack, you may have target attacking creature gain double strike until end of turn. Now, this is not only your creatures. So whenever someone attacks an opponent on someone else's turn, double strike it up. Push damage on your opponents. This is a double strike card that doesn't get got rid of by board wipes. It sticks around. You're playing it, you're attacking with things, they wipe your board, and then immediately you replay Horde of Notions and you whack them for that 10 double strike trample. So many of these cards are made far, far better by the fact that Horde of Notions has trample and haste. This is a through line through the whole deck. Smothering Tithe. I wanted a ramp spell. I consider this a very good ramp spell. Maelstrom Nexus. How cool is this? Your first spell each turn has Cascade. So it is clunky because you cast it, and then it's not going to trigger this turn because it's the first spell you cast. But you can trigger it on opponent's turns with instants. Use a cheap instant like flashing back Ancient Grudge, and you'll trigger the Nexus and you'll cascade. The other thing is the commander can trigger the Maelstrom Nexus, so he's cast. So the pattern of Maelstrom Nexus is you play it, you make a habit of holding up instants, and you make a habit of holding up your commander, and you play stuff on your turn, and very quickly you just take over the game with the insane amounts of value and tempo that Cascade affords. Also, Cascade is just fun, because you get a lot of value, you get a lot of tempo, and you don't know exactly what it's going to be. It's like what's in the box. That's fun. Invasion of Alara does not actually cascade, but it cascades, quote-unquote, for 2 cards with CMC 4 or less, and you cast one of them and you put the other one into your hand. But then the big thing is, when Invasion of Alara flips, you get to cast and Awaken the Maelstrom, which is an absolute game ender. This is 5 different good effects, and it's a good card to play just on its own. Damn. I wanted a board wipe, but I wanted a board wipe that would go well with my cascades. If I cascade into this, and I have a good board, it's okay, I just hit 1 creature. But I can overload it if the board has become too scary and needs to be dealt with, which often happens. Demonic Tutor. If you have this card, and you're playing black, you should play Demonic Tutor. It's like draw a card, except it's the one you want. Reanimate. Single black, bring back a creature from a yard, lose life equal to its cost. You don't like losing the life, but 1 mana for like an 8 mana creature is loads of fun. There are some really cool plays this deck can do, where, for instance, you play turn 1 you play a land, and turn 2 you play a bounce land. And then you have too many cards in hand, so you discard a big thing to hand size, and then the following turn you reanimate or animate dead, whatever the biggest thing in your hand was, and who's better than you? It's incredible. Ancestral Vision. Now, I would not play this card, except that I play Cascade cards. If you play a 1-drop with Cascade, it can only cascade into a 0-drop, and this is the only 0-drop in the deck, and it draws 3 cards, and refills for further cascading. It's incredible. Now, if you suspend it, it is less good, but it's still fine, because I'm playing a mid-range deck. I want the game to go late. I'll draw my 3 eventually, but the fact of the matter is, I only play this because I want to cascade into it. Cultivate. I like Cultivate. It's fun to resolve. Fiery Justice. This card is dope. You deals 5 damage divided however you choose for only 3 mana, and target opponent gains 5 life. Now, you can get political with this. You can give someone a gift of 5 life, and if you can leverage that into some advantage with them, you should do that. Maybe you even could finish off a player with this. I've done that before, where someone was at 5, and so I said, okay, you take 5, someone else take 5. It's just a very versatile control card. Unburial Rites. This is great. It is a reanimator card that itself can sort of be reanimated by flashing it back. Not only that, but the flashback is cheaper than the actual cast. If I activate a Hermit Druid, I might find an Unburial Rites and a big creature to reanimate. And that's just free. I just get that. All Sun's Dawn. This is one of your big payoff cards for playing all these multicolor cards. For each color, return up to 1 target card of that color from your graveyard to your hand. And then you exile All Sun's Dawn. So, for instance, Maelstrom Wander is 3 different colors. It can be your blue card, your red card, or your green card. And getting back 5 specific amazing cards, it's just so much value. This card's tempo is not so good because you're paying 5 mana to not affect the board, but the value. Now here is Living Death. I'm playing a Reanimator deck. I'm playing all these cool creatures. You bring them all back, and you wipe the board. Now, of course, your opponents benefit from it too. So you got to be smart with this. You don't want to give your opponent a really good board unless you're getting a board even better than that. But this card for 5 mana is so much potential value and tempo that you simply have to play it. Blasphemous Act. This is a board wipe that is efficient with my Cascade cards because I can't Cascade into it, and if I play it with a Cascade effect out, it can Cascade into any of my other cards. It's also very cheap mana-wise. That's the actual reason I play it. I wanted cheap, efficient board wipes, and a board wipe that can be played for a single mana fits the bill, because you can play your Blasphemous Act, and then you can immediately replay a big board. Loads of fun. And now, the final part, the instance. So we got Swords to Plowshares, exile any creature, why wouldn't you? And can also be used to gain life in a pinch, though not ideal. Ancient Grudge and Ray of Revelation. Now these, one of them kills an artifact, one of them kills an enchantment, and they each have flashback for a green. These cards are really, really, really good, and I emphatically think that anyone who can play them should seriously consider them. People are afraid to play Interaction in Commander, but Interaction is crucial, because there are so many different cards, like a Future Sight, for instance, that will take away the game if you get to stick them in play, or a Smothering Tithe, another good example, Mystic Forge, anything like that. But if you answer that card, then it won't take away the game, and these cards are just extremely efficient answers. What I love about these cards is your opponent can even counter them, and you don't care. You're just going to flash them back. The flashback is way better than the normal cast. I can mill them to a Hermit Druid and cast them back. Maybe I think I'm only going to need to use my Ray of Revelation once. I can discard it to Dakfaden, and I can still flash it back. Cards that get value out of the graveyard are great. Cards that interact with your opponents are great. I've tried to play a lot of interaction in here. These cards are great. Alright, now we got our Is It Charm. This card needs to see more play. Counter a non-creature spell unless its controller pays 2, or 2 to target creature, or draw 2 and discard 2. None of these modes are extremely impressive, but they are all extremely relevant, and playing counter spells you can cascade into is great, because most counter spells you cascade into it and you just decline to cast, and that's no fun. But Is It Charm can facilitate reanimation, it can snipe a thing, it can stop a combo, it does all kinds of stuff. Boros Charm, this card rocks. It can double strike a thing, it can give all your permanents indestructible, which is big synergy with all my board wipes I'm playing, or a counter to an opponent board wipe, or you can deal 4 to a player or planeswalker, which probably won't matter, but hey, maybe it will. You know, if I got a Gisela and an Aragorn out, cast a Boros Charm, deal 14 to an opponent, not bad. Azorius Charm. This is a recent addition. I added it because I realized I needed another way to gain life, and I want to give all my guys lifelink. But it also has other good modes. You can cycle it to draw a card, which is great on anything, because what if you don't want to use the other modes? Or you can bounce an attacking or blocking creature to the top of its opponent's library. Now, weird effects like this are great, because when your opponents know about them, then they'll be thinking, oh, maybe I shouldn't attack, maybe he has an Azorius Charm. You'll notice this deck plays many different kinds of interaction. It's because I'm trying to get in my opponent's head. I mean, really, it's because I'm trying to interact. But it has the added bonus effect of you can get in your opponent's head and make them think, well, I shouldn't play this, because then they'll have that, when as a matter of fact, you're really just leaving up mana to activate your commander. Cyclonic Rift. It's Cyclonic Rift. Crib Swap. You exile a creature, and its controller puts in a 1/1 colorless shapeshifter with Changeling, but the interesting thing about this card is it is a Changeling, so it is an elemental, so I can play it with my commander. And it doesn't exile, I can repeatedly play it. This is sort of a build-your-own legacy weapon. I can repeatedly pay 5 to exile the scariest creature, and replace it with a 1/1. You can use this to totally lock someone out of their commander, you can use this to very great effect, and it's a fine spell on its own, as a 3-drop from hand. Riveteer's Charm. This card, I'm playing it because it can exile target player's graveyard, And if I'm playing Living Death, I need capacity to exile my opponent's graveyard. But it's also got some other cool stuff going on. We can make an opponent sack a creature or walker they control with their highest mana value. So if someone has an Ugin, for instance, that you can't stop, you can make them sacrifice it. Or, and this is an interesting mode, exile the top 3 cards of your library until the next end step. You may play those cards. It's card advantage. It's draw 3, but not quite draw 3. Now, Mystic Confluence, this is another counter spell you can cascade into. Counter a spell unless they pay 3, return a creature to owner's hand, or draw, and you can pick the same mode more than once. And we've got Unite the Coalition. The moment I saw this, I knew I had to play it. It has 5 different modes. You can, just like Mystic Confluence, choose the same mode more than once, phase out a permanent to protect it, or to stop an opponent's thing temporarily, draw, it's another way to exile graveyards, deal 2 to targets, this can just hit players, this can just be a 7 mana deal 10 to a player, and the Disenchant mode, which is probably the best mode. So, that is my Horde of Notions, Reanimator, Elementals, Midrange, Beatdown, Everything Burrito EDH deck.